Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. Today we're going to take a look at how to power carve a striped bass. Now this particular project started with two pieces of 1x12 pine I just picked up at the local Home Depot that I glued together. I then downloaded an image of a striped bass from the internet and sized it appropriately for the fish that I wanted, and then I just cut it out and traced that. For the inside details, I just pressed firmly with a pen. And then you could see the indentation from the pen, and I just kind of traced that with a marker. This is going to be my first attempt at really carving, or attempting to carve a striped bass, so you got to stick with me a little bit here. This is going to be a wall-mounted wood carving, so I'm only going to carve one side. I cut out the outline just with a jigsaw. You could also use a pin saw. And once I got the fish profiled, I moved on to the main tool for this job, which is going to be an angle grinder. I'm using a 36 grit flap sanding wheel. I pick them up down at Harbor Freight. They're fairly inexpensive. They don't last a tremendous amount of time, but they move material very nicely. You know, you can lean into it and remove a lot of material, or do some fine detail work. All I'm doing is, the first thing I did was I just carved down the dorsal fins a little bit for thickness, and then I'm just outlining the details, you know, so the not only the fins but also the gills of the fish. And then eventually I'll start to round over the edges of the fish, and then also kind of taper down the tail so that the tail tapers away from the head. And all I'm doing is really just roughing away material here. Nothing difficult, just taking my time. Instead of doing it all in one pass, I'm kind of doing a pass and then going back and putting a little bit more detail into it as I go, just refining it. So I'm just grinding down or thinning down the tail itself. I don't want to go too thin. This particular fish is going to be hung outdoors, so I want it to be able to stand up to the elements. I just want it to be visually thinner by the tail. And once I've got the fish rounded over, I'm going to work on the fish lips. You can see it's nothing fancy. I'll do the same top and bottom. I'll just start the lip. I have to retrace or redraw exactly, you know, where the lips are going to be, because I want them to follow the profile of the fish itself, rather than, you know, a drawing that was trying to look three-dimensional. So I'm just using a Sharpie. I'm also going to mark the area that I want to kind of hock out inside the fish's mouth. So just going back, outlining the fish lips, and slowly rounding over all of the edges. To hock out the material on the inside of the fish's mouth, you could use a Dremel tool. This is actually an air grinder. And then I used an oscillating sander with a 80 grit paper just to smooth out all of those really rough grind lines from the disc grinder or from the angle grinder. And then I actually went to a 220 grit. I used a speed bore to drill a hole, you know, partially through, just for the eye. And then I went back to the angle grinder to add more detail, not only to the tail fin but all of the fins. Make these little grooves, and this is when the fish really seems to come together. Once you start working with this angle grinder, you get some good control on it. It's really fun to work with. I used a Dremel grinder with a cutoff wheel just to add some additional lines onto the fin, or onto the fins. It's actually starting to look like a fish. I stuck with the Dremel grinder. I have a little round tool, and I figured I'd just put some round holes in a line just to simulate the stripes on the striped bass, which are on the real fish are like dots. Now I'm going to stain this fish, but what I wanted the fins to be a little bit darker than the rest of the fish itself, and I wanted the top of the fish to be a little bit darker. So I just used a little propane torch or butane torch just to darken up those areas before the stain. After I stained it and I let it dry completely, I did give it several coats of spray clear gloss lacquer, hoping that will just help it hold up to the elements. Now, like I said, you could mount this on a wall inside the house, or you could desk mount it. I'm using mine outside, and I'm actually using it to enhance an outdoor hook-it game that I have. I wanted that game to have more of a nautical fishing theme to it, and I thought this striped bass would just be perfect. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. By all means, check us out on the web at www.diyeasycrafts.com. Got a bunch of nautical and fishing-related crafts on there. Thank you very much. Lastly, I would absolutely love it if you took a minute or two just to leave comment in the comment section. Thank you very much.